and sometimes a good horror movie. I know that's a really... She could see the charter. She began to feel the... They were then roared. So the 5 abandoned Irelanders have been eagerly. Hey guys! If you've never watched any of my videos, my name is Erica and I love books and makeup. I especially love to recommend the most amazing books that I've just read while I do my makeup. I am so excited about today's book because it is a psychological thriller novel and it's by an author that I have actually done a video review for before. What? I know I'm not doing a romance novel, shocker. But if you know me, aside from my obsession and love for romance novels, I also have a special spot in my heart for psychological thrillers and suspense novels. Sometimes a good horror book every now and then. I did grow up reading Stephen King as a child. I know that's probably not very appropriate for a child, but I do love my scary stuff. So today's thriller novel is called The Missing, and it is by Kiersten Modglin. I'm a huge fan of her writing. I think that she just does a really good job of tricking the reader, and I love that. I love that shock factor in a book, and this author definitely brings that. Today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the book and the characters in the book and what you should expect if you decide to pick this book up, and a little bit about the author in case you haven't seen my other video and in case you haven't read anything by this author before. And I know you're probably looking at me and you're like, what the hell, Erica? You're not wearing your hair in a bun. I don't even know who you are right now. I did get my hair done last week and I wanted something fresh for the summer. And I do always put my hair up in a bun, mostly to keep the hair out of my face while I'm doing my makeup. I had some pretty bad split ends, so I never wore my hair down, and well, now that I can, I do. That is why I have my hair down today. I am ready to put my makeup on, so let's get started. So this story starts out with a woman who is on vacation with her husband. As she's sitting on the beach, having a cocktail, she realizes how lonely she feels by the fact that, although on vacation, her husband is in the hotel room, busying himself with work. In her mind, you don't take work with you while on vacation. She's feeling entirely neglected, as she has been for some time, because she's realizing that she comes second to her husband's job. She thought that this vacation was going to be a great opportunity for them to connect, but she's trying to make the best of it as she has her Kindle in hand, enjoying the warm sun. While she's relaxing on the beach, deep in thought over her marriage troubles, she notices a man who seems to be making his way in her direction. As she prepares herself for a conversation that she really is not in the mood to have with someone, she's surprised when this man asks if she would like a free ride on a chartered yacht. She could see the yacht in the near distance from where she was sitting on the beach, and she could hear the music blaring from the speakers on the yacht, as well as a handful of people who seemed to be enjoying themselves. But she couldn't really understand why this man would make such an offer. And seeing as though he had a very thick accent, she wasn't really able to get much clarity on the situation, aside from the fact that there was one spot left on the yacht, and the captain told him to offer the vacancy to someone. To this man, she looked very lonely on the beach, and he thought that she could use the outing. With some hesitation, the woman did agree, mostly because she was, in fact, lonely and kind of bored on a vacation that should have been spent with her husband. And when the man who was presenting the invitation offered up the perks of free booze and good company, she felt like that was enough to convince her. Besides, she didn't think that her husband would even notice that she was gone for the few hours that the outing would take. Once on board, the woman quickly realized how out of place she felt amongst the 4 other guests on that chartered yacht. And her intuition kept telling her that she shouldn't have accepted the invitation in the first place. The one guest on the yacht that did make her acquaintance seemed much younger than her, and he also seemed quite arrogant. She began to feel the regret of accepting the invitation as she realized how stupid it was to venture into the middle of the ocean with a bunch of complete strangers. Her sudden trepidations were quickly confirmed and justified while in the middle of the ocean. The yacht started to have some engine problems. The crew, which she seemed to suddenly realize outnumbered the actual guests on the yacht, tried to calm everyone down, assuring them that they would just have to make a stop at the nearest port in order to get the yacht back into working order. But once they neared the port, the guests noticed that it wasn't a port at all. In fact, it was just an island. No port, no docks, no other boats, and most notably, no other people. But the crew, once again, tried to assure the guests they could just take advantage of this situation and enjoy the vacant island as somewhat of a private beach. I am at a stopping point, so I'm going to go ahead and put my eyebrows on, and when I come back, I will talk a little bit more about this story. I will be right back. I am back and my eyebrows are done. So let's get back to the story. After the crew assisted the passengers onto a small dinghy, they were then rowed to the shore of the island. Once they made it to the island, the crew member got back on the dinghy, leaving the passengers on the island with a promise to return and pick them up once the yacht was fixed. But the passengers quickly noticed that once all of the crew members were back on the yacht, it somehow magically started up again. And it began to sail away with no promise of returning. It was then that the passengers knew they had just been abandoned, left with not even water to drink. As the story continues, it moves from the present time during which the passengers are stranded on the island to past events that led up to that point. And since the story is told from the first-person perspective of the woman, the past events allow you to get to know her in a different light. But as the story is being told in the present time on the island, the woman gets to know her fellow stranded islanders very quickly. You get to know that she is in the company of the only other woman named Ava, who appeared even younger than the young man that she'd been acquainted with on the yacht. Ava seemed incredibly frail and scared upon their initial abandonment on the island. And the female lead character kind of took on a mothering or caretaker role at first with her. And the arrogant man who the woman previously met on the yacht was named Noah. There was also a man named Harry who seemed very studious and quiet, and one additional man named James. So the 5 abandoned islanders were starting to realize how dire their situation was and how much worse it was quickly becoming. they quickly set aside any hope that the yacht was going to come back for them. And they worked at trying to find any basic necessities that were vital for surviving, especially since they'd been left with nothing. As they'd all been unsure as to why they'd been abandoned on this island, they started trying to rationalize reasons they may have been targeted. The biggest question was obviously, why were they there in the first place? But the smaller questions like, did they have anything in common? Did they have any enemies? Were they being held for ransom? They hoped that by answering those smaller questions, that it would help them figure out the much bigger question. But once they realized that none of the answers to those smaller questions led them to any bigger enlightened realizations, they quickly started becoming suspicious of each other. As the days went by with no promise of being rescued or picked up by the yacht that had brought them there, they knew that they needed to find a way to sustain survival long term. Some of the islanders began to venture further into the island in order to find food and water and a higher vantage point for surveying their surroundings. But during those outings, they began to notice things that led them to believe that they weren't alone, and that imminent danger may not only exist in their lack of sustenance and shelter. Eventually, the 5 abandoned passengers realized in order to avoid death, it would mean survival of the fittest. And on that note, I am at a stopping point. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up my makeup off camera. And then when I come back, I'm going to talk about my final thoughts and opinions on this story, as well as a little information about the author that wrote this story. On that note, I will be right back. I'm back. And my makeup is done. When I review a book, I like to try and complement my makeup look with either the book cover or a detail in the book. I wanted to do somewhat of a nautical theme, and I did something that ended up reminding me more of like a mermaid, so that's what I went with today. So I'm going to give you my final thoughts and opinions about this story and a little bit about the author. Let's get into it. This story kind of reminded me of a genius mixture of the show Lost, Lord of the Flies, and Hostel. And I don't want to give an explanation as to why that is because I don't want to give too much away. Also, as I got deeper into the story, the more I started to get a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Almost like maybe I had missed something when I read, and then I started to feel like maybe the islanders in the story weren't the only ones getting duped. This is a new release psychological thriller. I got an advanced reading copy from the author herself. That was just in exchange for an honest review on Amazon or Goodreads, but in no way did she encourage me to make this video about her book. I just enjoyed this book so much that I felt compelled to tell you all about it on camera because it was such an entertaining story. I've actually done a video review for one of her other books before, and that book was called The Roommate, and that novel was equally as suspenseful and twisted as this one was. I have communicated with this author many times over social media, and after reading this novel, I told her that if I didn't know that she was such an amazing and awesome person, I'd be truly terrified of how her mind works in order to create stories like this. And I will link my other video review for this author up above because you really should check that book out too. In case you didn't see my last video review for this author, she lives in Nashville, Tennessee, with her husband and her daughter, and her 2 Boston Terriers, which I have a Boston Terrier. I have an extra special place in my heart for Bostie lovers. This author is an Amazon top 30 best-selling author. I have not read all of this author's books yet, but I know that I will, and honestly, I'm kind of glad that I have a plethora of her books to look forward to reading, because I swear that every time I've finished one of her novels, I immediately crave another one. This book is available on Kindle Unlimited, and I am pretty sure that all of her books are available on Kindle Unlimited. Don't quote me on that, but when I was looking, it looked like all of her books were available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you haven't checked out any of her work yet, this is a great way to get to experience a new author and their stories without feeling like you have to make such a huge commitment. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you know that you can just rent this book, start reading it, and if you feel like you don't like it, which I can't see that happening, but if you feel like you don't like it, then you can always return it and start a new book, and you haven't wasted any money. I really hope that you read this book. I would not lead you astray. I would not recommend a book that I didn't truly love, and I truly loved this book, and I have not been disappointed by any of this author's novels. If you like to have your mind tricked with while you're reading, and if you like something suspenseful, and if you like to kind of have the rug pulled under from you when you're reading, you will love this author's books. I hope you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more video reviews from me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I try to bring a new book recommendation every week. And if you're curious about any of the makeup I used today, as always, I will list all of the products that I used down below in the description box. And I will also list a link where you can find this book that I featured in today's video. As always, thank you so much for your time and for your support. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Y'all stay safe out there, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!